The Interdisciplinary Scientific Studies for Innovation Leadership enables research students to use action research that is founded on critical realism and Lassallean principles. By integrating and analyzing theories, concepts, and information from different disciplines, innovative proposals are recommended to solve and to address complex issues. We'll walk you through the basic concepts needed in an interdisciplinary research in a critical realist view.
As Lassallean, it is not enough to simply see or experience the pressing issues and challenges in our society today. Hence, Lassallean reflection framework is a very useful tool for us to become aware of our social responsibility as individuals and to convert our thoughts into actionable commitment. Lassallean reflection framework will be helpful when we try to do action research and all formation and engagement activities. Lassallean reflection framework has three important stages, namely see experience or in Filipino, masid danas, analysis reflection or suri nilay, and the commitment action or taya kilos. The first stage is the see experience or in Filipino, masid danas. It is a process of understanding the situation and the social issues and becoming aware of the sufferings of people around you. It emphasizes the need to experience the situation firsthand through exposure or immersion, which leads to longing for answers and clarity. The next stage is the analysis reflection or suri nilay. It is a stage where we analyze the situation and we do critical reflection of why the situation is happening. Only when we understand the causal factors that trigger the event can we proceed to the next stage, which is the commitment action or taya kilos. This stage engages the Lassalleans into the work mission where plans are put into action in order to improve our society as a whole. This stage shall end with the evaluation or reflection of the act or intervention. The Lassallean reflection framework is a cycle because there is a possibility that after completing the first cycle, we will be able to experience and see other opportunities to uplift the conditions of others, especially the poorest and most marginalized segments of society.
Guided by the Lassallean reflection framework, let's now contextualize these concepts towards solving social inequalities. The document Principles of Lassallean Social Development discusses our role in solving issues in our society. It is divided into 4 parts. The first part of the document introduces us to the existence of different forms of exclusion and deprivations in our society. The Lassallean community, together with other educational institutions, should reflect on their roles and duties to solve these inequalities in our society. In the second part of the document, we are asked to develop a deeper sense and understanding of these inequalities. In critical realism, we are invited to view problems and issues using a laminated system. Thus, we need to understand that problems and issues involve multiple elements. In the third part of the document, we are called to act on our understanding, to create and effect liberating action. As individuals and as a community, Lassalleans must act to eventually put an end to social issues and inequalities in our country. The last part of the document calls for solidarity, for communion in mission, a key Lassallean value. We are called to cooperate and work with like-minded organizations and individuals that share our mission of eliminating human sufferings in all of its forms. Interdisciplinarity is important because social issues need to be solved by the integration of various academic fields. As we heed this call for solidarity, this communion in mission, we are always asked to communicate, to build bridges rather than to alienate. In Habermas' theory of communicative action, we are asked to hear all sides participating in a discussion, and at the end, to reach a consensus oriented towards the real understanding of the issue. In another related theory, Habermas' ideal speech situation instructs us to allow everyone to partake in the discourse without being prevented. Thus, anyone, regardless of status, gender, or age can partake in an interdisciplinary discussion in an ideal speech situation.
Habermas's theory of communicative action compels us to listen to others' ideas and eventually reach a consensus. The equivocal question, "What is reality?" may lead to several answers. Some argue that reality is constrained to only what we can see or sense, but Roy Basker's critical realism offers a different definition of reality. There's an Indian parable on 6 blind men and an elephant. Each blind man tried to guess what was in front of them by touching the elephant. One would say it's a tree, the next one it's a horn, and the rest would say different answers. This parable represents the triumvirate of critical realism. The elephant represents ontological realism, where reality is intransitive. The world that science investigates is autonomous from the human being's perception and knowing. In this case, the elephant is real even though the blind man's perceptions of it are different. Epistemic relativism states that human knowing is transitive. Our knowing is finite, contextual, and fallible since knowledge is dependent on the knower. In the parable, the 6 blind men have their own interpretations of the elephant. Keep in mind that intransitive and transitive dimensions are distinct. Any confusion of the two will result in the epistemic fallacy. Epistemic fallacy is our tendency to reduce reality into our knowledge of it. Judgmental rationality allows us to commit to evaluate similar and even conflicting claims because there is an intransitive basis for evaluation. The triumvirate of critical realism also clarifies the difference between pluralism and relativism. In relativism, there's an acceptance of all views. Pluralism allows us to respect and be open to other views, which the critical realist epistemology subscribes to. Recall that in Habermas's ideal speech situation, all participants are allowed to partake in the discourse. There are events which we have not experienced or cannot be known. Basker states that there are 3 domains of reality. We will use the tree diagram from Walsh and Evans to illustrate the 3 domains. Experiences that we can sense, that is see, touch, hear, taste, smell, belong to the empirical domain. Here, the person can see the branches and the leaves. All events, including those that are not experienced, belong to the actual domain. Even though the person cannot see the trunk behind the wall, he perceives that there is a trunk based on the position of the branches. The causal entities, structures, and causes that may lead to an event belong to the real domain. Here, the person cannot see the roots of the tree, but even though he doesn't see the roots, it doesn't mean that the roots are not real. Another element of critical realism is open systemic causality. Open systems allow causal factors to operate naturally. In this example, we expect that the ball will hit the floor because of gravity, but an intervening cause, in this case we have a hand, may prevent the ball from hitting the floor. Causes operate as tendencies in the open world. A cause cannot predict events because of other causes interacting with it. The world is full of multiplicity of causes. There are different causes in the open system. Each belongs to a distinct stratum of being, as these causes cannot be reduced to the more basic causes. Emergence is the process of forming a new entity with its own particular characteristics. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. The computer is emergent from the assembly of plastic, metal, silicon, and electricity and cannot be reduced to the parts that made this up. The computer properties are different from the properties of these materials. Reality is not limited to what is observed. To understand a phenomenon, it is imperative that we acknowledge the key points of critical realism. The world is not only intransitive, but it is also stratified. A phenomenon is most likely to be complex as it is caused by several types of causes that interact in the open system. For us to unearth these causes, we need to consider several disciplines. Thus, adopting critical realism is integral in the pursuit of interdisciplinarity.
Now that you know these concepts, let us now talk how critical realism can provide a firm foundation for and aligns with the concerns of action research. There is a growing interest in critical realism and its application to various academic and professional fields. Through critical realism, scholars and inquirers may be able to identify and understand the causal mechanisms that trigger events that we may observe and on how we should respond to those events. Action research is a term used to describe the approach that integrates theory and action with the goal of addressing important issues of the society, organizations, and community together with those who experience them. Action research is not just about doing a research paper or about extracting information for a particular topic. Action research is a cyclical process, meaning that you will have to repeat the process over and over until you find the solution that satisfies it. Action research starts by looking for a problem, deciding a possible solution or strategy to solve the problem, taking action, monitoring outcomes, and reflecting on what happened. Usually, the first cycle would not completely resolve the problem. New complications may arise and you have to repeat the cycle until you find the best solution, and so on. When assessing and proposing an intervention, we must first understand the causation of multifaceted situations. Of the three domains, the causal level of reality is the level that embraces the unseen mechanisms that generate or produce events. This last level has a central and unique importance in critical realism. Even though the causal level of reality is not open to perception, it is still real as it produces discernible effects in the empirical and the actual level of experience. Critical realism for action research can assist the inquirer or researcher to understand the deep-seated causes of behavior and social problems, and it enables us to respond to different challenges in a more insightful way. As a conclusion, action research is a method that can embrace critical realist perspectives. Action research, along with critical realism, subscribe to the notion that it is not enough to understand the social world, but we must also act to change it. Critical realism enriches action research by moving from surface to depth of the nature of the problems which action research seeks to address and change.
Moving on, the paper of birth Donner Mark, Applied Interdisciplinary Research, a Critical Realist Perspective, can sustain and strengthen interdisciplinary research by achieving the integration of knowledge. In achieving this goal, he identified and described 5 phases of critical realist interdisciplinary research. First is the planning interdisciplinary phase. This is to decide whether or not interdisciplinary research is necessary. If so, there is a need to identify the relevant levels of reality. A move from epistemology to ontology, from the question of areas of knowledge to level of reality. Researchers estimate the types of structures and mechanisms and create necessary laminated systems that must be included in their research to achieve its objective. Through this, they can decide which areas of knowledge must be considered and recruit the relevant scientific experts who are willing to commit to a critical realist meta-theory. The most important concept here is emergence, or the appearance of higher order, new levels of properties and mechanisms from lower order levels. The second phase is the disciplinary understanding. Each expert is expected to contribute their specialized in-depth knowledge about the structure, mechanisms, and context to produce an outcome. There are 3 different concepts used, namely discipline, area of knowledge, and levels. This phase is also called the reductionist phase, as it focuses on the generative powers at different levels. In this phase, experts can do their part of the research independently from each other. However, researchers must approach the critical realist embrace. They must have certain open-mindedness and tolerance for other disciplines.
Therefore, it is necessary to reach a consensus regarding issues such as avoiding the epistemic fallacy and ontological malevolence. For the third phase, the cross-disciplinary understanding, Roy Bhaskar highlighted two important principles: that any human being can empathize with and come to understand any other human being, and that there is a basic logic of human learning applicable to the practical order accessed by all human beings irrespective of cultural differentiation. The former addresses the issue of incommensurability, and the latter focuses on the rationality of learning. Mutual respect is another aspect in this phase. Investigations at different levels require different methods due to ontology. To what extent researchers must learn from other areas of knowledge? Based on the article, there is no need to become an expert in another area of knowledge, but a creative collaborative work in the transdisciplinary phase requires at least some basic insights into other theories. Transfactual theorizing is the fourth phase. This phase emphasizes on integration and synergy. There are tools for this to be successful. First is the necessary laminated system, an example of which is the Bhaskar and Danemark's 7 kinds of mechanisms. The second tool is a model called 4-planar social beings. It includes 4 dimensions: material transactions with nature, social interaction between human beings, social structure proper, and the stratification of the embodied personality. Based on this, social phenomena must be analyzed in terms of human-nature relations. Third tool is the 7-scalar model, which ranges from a sub-individual scale to a planetary scale. By using these tools, it will be possible to transcend boundaries of an area of knowledge. It will produce knowledge that is not been possible to reach within a single area of knowledge or discipline, which is called the epistemic emergence. The last phase, interdisciplinary understanding. It is the outcome, an integrated knowledge about the object. One challenge is the dissemination of results. It is indeed crucial and requires careful wording and experiences. In a critical realist perspective, it is possible to present simple solutions to complex problems, to intervene and change reality, that is, to abolish or at least mitigate negative conditions in society. This means it is necessarily to make a final necessary step from epistemology back to ontology, where it all started.
Given that we have the guide in analyzing social issues using interdisciplinary means, we have to set our goals. Sharing one home, member states of the United Nations came up with a list of 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which are envisioned to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure peace and prosperity by 2030. 5 of the SDGs target the basic needs of all people: no poverty, no hunger, good health systems, quality education, and clean water, all of which are basic necessities shared by all people regardless of creed, color, or race. 4 of the SDGs are centered towards sustainable work. These goals call for the promotion of decent work and economic growth, the development of industry, innovation, and infrastructure, the design of sustainable cities and communities, and the assurance of responsible consumption and production patterns. 4 of the SDGs are catered towards caring for the environment. These goals ensure affordable and clean energy, a proactive climate action stance, the conservation of marine resources, and the protection of our land resources. The last 4 SDGs are calls for equality. These goals promote equality among genders, equality within and among countries, equality in terms of peace and justice, and equality through global partnerships. Given all of these concepts, through critical realism, action research, and communicative action, guided by our Lasallian principles, let's work towards these goals through the integration of various research fields in an interdisciplinary manner.